Hi, my name is Musashi, and this is Anime Anatomy, where I analyze anime story form. And today, we'll be breaking down one of the most iconic scenes in all of One Piece, Zoro versus Mr. 1. So let's look at where the scene is positioned on Zoro's character arc, which is to say, Zoro's character development. Zoro's character arc is to become the world's strongest swordsman. So where does this scene fit into his development, and how does it further it? To answer this, it's important to look at a scene from a previous arc, Little Garden. In this particular scene, Zoro, Nami, and Vivi are stuck in a cake made of wax and they can't get out. As the candles burn, they slowly run out of time to live. So Zoro tries to cut the wax in order to get out, but can't cut it because it's too hard. As a result, Zoro decides to cut off his own feet instead, taking his chances to fight without feet rather than face certain death. Luckily, halfway through, Luffy and Usopp arrive in the nick of time to save them. Later on, we see him training his body in order to become stronger so that next time he can cut even through iron. Fast forward to Alabasta, and once again, Zoro finds himself in the same exact predicament. Zoro must find a way to defeat Mr. 1, who's made of steel. So how does this fit into Zoro's character arc? Zoro's inability to cut what he needs to cut has been a major, recurring obstacle to him up until this point, and it's been holding him back. In other words, he's at a place in his development where he's stuck. So the fight with Mr. 1 allows him to finally overcome this crucial hindrance and ascend to the next level, taking the next big step and becoming the world's strongest swordsman. However, this time, the stakes are much higher than before, because this time, either he cuts steel and becomes stronger, or he doesn't, and will lose his life as opposed to just his feet. So what problems must be solved in the scene, and what does the scene need to accomplish? Part of what makes this scene so effective and so compelling is that it keeps the problem simple and specific. Basically, the scene needs to accomplish two things. One, present an obstacle difficult enough for Zoro to overcome. That two, forces Zoro to find a way to become stronger in order to overcome it. So let's take a look at how Oda goes about solving these two problems. So what strategies can Oda use to solve the problems? Let's start with the first problem, presenting an obstacle that's sufficiently difficult for Zoro to overcome. The key word here is Zoro. What this scene does so beautifully is that it presents Zoro with an opponent designed to directly attack his weaknesses. For one, Mr. 1 is a particularly difficult opponent for Zoro, not just because he's made of steel, which is a weakness for swordsmen in general, but rather, Mr. 1 attacks Zoro's mindset. Zoro's personal philosophy is to continually push forward, keep trying until he succeeds, and to attack his problems with hard work and physical training until he overcomes them. This is the same old approach to the same problem, and it still isn't working. Therefore, Mr. 1 forces Zoro to have to confront his problems in a new way. So in this way, Mr. 1 attacks Zoro's psychological weaknesses as well as his physical ones as a swordsman. This is one of the reasons why Mr. 1 is such an effective opponent for Zoro. A good opponent attacks the hero's weaknesses and brings out the best in them as well. And so, the crisis in the scene sets up the conditions that force Zoro to seek new sources of power, having to go within as opposed to without in order to find what he's missing to win. So scenes are where the action of the story takes place. And since no one acts without desire, desire makes scenes happen. It's what drives the scene. So whose scene is it, and what does he want? In this case, it's Zoro's scene, and his desire is to defeat Mr. 1. The scene does a very good job of keeping this simple and making it clear. In this scene, Zoro badly wants to defeat Mr. 1. However, he's having difficulty doing it. In other words, he has a problem. As we know, Zoro cannot cut Mr. 1 because he's made of steel. But this is what we, the audience, think the scene is all about. However, his desire to defeat Mr. 1 is merely an external goal used to fulfill an inner need remaining hidden beneath the surface of the scene, unbeknownst to Zoro, which is the need to learn to hear the breath of all things, which we later learn to be the mysterious ability, Haki, which only blooms in extreme conditions and in times of crisis. This is why it's so important for Oda to set up the crisis or the problem of the scene well. Because not only does crisis provide the basis for the future power system within this story, but crisis defines a character very quickly. The crisis should be an outside manifestation of the hero's weakness, and it should highlight that weakness for the audience. For example, Zoro's crisis, that he cannot cut steel, is an outward manifestation of his weakness. A weakness subtly hinted at by Mihawk way back in their first encounter in chapter 50, and later on when he recalls the words of his master. That is, there is no strength in swords play based only on force, and a sword that injures all that it touches is not really a sword. Zoro's swords play is based primarily on force, which is why we see him continually training his body to get stronger. In a lot of ways, Zoro is just like Mr. 1, who tells Zoro not to consider himself a swordsman, since he cuts through everything without restraint, which is a callback to Zoro's long-held desire to be able to cut anything. In this way, this is Oda telling us that Zoro shouldn't be considered a swordsman either at this point. So that was a breakdown of Zoro versus Mr. 1. At the end of the day, there are plenty of other things that this scene does really well, but these are just a few of the things that really stand out to me. Ultimately, what Oda does really well with this scene is that he tells a good story. A character pursuing a desire takes actions to get what he wants and learns new information about better ways to get it. All stories move this way. And since a scene is really just a mini story, a good scene works as a good mini story. And since One Piece is jam-packed with scenes just as good, if not better than this one, it's no wonder the overall story of One Piece is so great. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.